The sky above Arkan Outpost was dark with storm clouds, but the real storm was not the weather. It was the army surrounding them. The Dravik Dominion had arrived like a shadow over the horizon, their ships hovering silently at first, then opening fire on anything that moved. The outpost, perched on the rocky cliffs of the planet Coran, was supposed to be safe, a place where humans and alien allies worked together to explore new energy sources and study strange phenomena. Now, it was a trap. Captain Lyra Venn stood on the main observation deck, her hands gripping the railing so tightly her knuckles whitened. She was an alien, tall and lithe, with gray-blue skin and eyes like polished amber. Her people were known for their patience and precision, but patience was hard to keep when the sound of heavy artillery shook the ground beneath her feet. The outpost had been under attack for hours, and already several external defense posts had fallen. Smoke curled up from the northern perimeter, twisting into the clouds above like black snakes. "Commander," a voice called behind her. It was Corporal Ryan, a human who had stayed behind when most of the human crew evacuated. His uniform was torn and dust covered his face, but his eyes burned with determination. "They're closing in faster than expected. If we don't do something, the outer wall will break in the next hour." Lyra nodded, forcing herself to breathe steadily. She had been trained for moments like this, but training and reality were very different. She scanned the battlefield through the reinforced glass. Seeing the Dravik soldiers moving in organized waves, their weapons glowing with deadly energy, she had seen enough of war to know they were outnumbered. Way outnumbered. "We can hold the inner bunkers," Lyra said, trying to convince herself as much as Ryan. "If we retreat there, we can protect the civilians and regroup. But if the Draviks break the outer wall, we lose everything." Her voice was calm, but inside, fear gnawed at her chest. Ryan shook his head. "They're too many. Even if we survive, there's no way anyone can get to us in time." He looked out the window, his gaze fixed on the horizon, as if willing a miracle to happen. "We're alone here, Captain." Lyra's stomach tightened. The word alone hung in the air like a curse. "We're not alone," she said softly, even though she didn't believe it. "Our allies know we're here. They will come." But she could hear the doubt in her own voice. The sound of explosions drew their attention to the southern wall. The Dravik artillery had finally breached a section, sending debris flying in all directions. Lyra's team moved immediately, coordinating fire from the defensive turrets and calling in targeting information. Even as the defenders fought, the Draviks advanced with mechanical precision. Each step they took was calculated, each move designed to crush any resistance. And yet, the defenders held their ground, small groups of humans and aliens fighting side by side, refusing to yield. Inside the control room, alarms blared as sensors detected a new wave of enemy reinforcements. Lyra's fingers danced across the console, sending commands to turrets, doors, and emergency locks. She was exhausted, but she could not stop. If she stopped even for a moment, the outpost would fall. Every decision was life or death, and mistakes could not be afforded. "Captain," Ryan called again. "The civilians are panicking. They don't know where to go. Some are trapped in the research labs." He pointed to the holographic map projected above the table. Red dots, representing Dravik soldiers, spread across the map, encroaching closer to blue dots, representing defenders. Tiny green dots showed civilians, scattered and confused. "We need a plan now." Lyra swallowed hard. She took a deep breath and focused. "We hold them in the inner bunkers," she repeated more firmly this time. "We set up the automated defenses at the entry points and we get civilians to the safe zones. Everyone else fight. We cannot leave anyone behind." Ryan nodded, his jaw tight with determination. "Then let's move. I'll guide the civilians while you coordinate the defense." The corridors of Arkan Outpost were tense and silent, except for the occasional rumble from the walls as explosions struck nearby. Civilians, mostly humans and a few alien researchers, huddled in small groups, frightened but obedient. They looked to Ryan and Lyra for guidance. Together, the two leaders directed the people to the bunkers, keeping spirits high even as fear threatened to take over. Outside, the Draviks had brought in siege walkers, towering machines bristling with weapons. They stomped across the rocky terrain, firing relentlessly at anything that moved. Turrets from the outpost responded, firing in arcs of energy, but each shot seemed to barely slow the advance of the enemy. The defenders were running out of time. In the middle of the chaos, Lyra spotted something unexpected. A group of young engineers had taken cover behind a supply depot, trying to patch up a damaged turret. She called out to them, her voice cutting through the air. "We need that turret operational. Lives depend on it." The engineers worked feverishly, hands shaking, sweat and soot covering their faces. After tense minutes, the turret powered up, firing in a wide arc, slowing the Dravik advance just enough to give the defenders a slight reprieve. Ryan returned from escorting civilians, his uniform torn and face streaked with grime. "They're coming closer," he reported. "We'll have to fight in the corridors soon. The outer wall can't hold them much longer." Lyra's heart sank. She had hoped to avoid close-quarter combat, but it was inevitable. The outpost was not designed for a prolonged siege, and its corridors, while secure, would become death traps if the Draviks reached them. Suddenly, the control panel flashed red, signaling a critical breach. One of the outer walls had been destroyed completely. Lyra looked through the viewing window, her stomach tightening as she saw Dravik soldiers pouring into the outpost. Their weapons glowed with deadly energy, and their faces, though alien, reflected no hesitation. "Fall back!" Lyra shouted, her voice echoing through the corridors. "To the inner bunkers! Protect the civilians at all costs!" The defenders moved quickly, guiding the civilians through narrow corridors while firing at the advancing Draviks. The halls were filled with the sounds of shouting, gunfire, and the occasional explosion. Dust and debris choked the air, making it difficult to see, but the defenders pressed on. As they reached the inner bunkers, Lyra felt a moment of hopelessness. They were surrounded, outnumbered, and running low on supplies. Every strategy she had used so far had only delayed the inevitable. Yet, despite the fear gnawing at her, she refused to surrender. Surrender was not an option. Ryan stood beside her, breathing heavily but alert. "They'll tear through the doors in minutes," he said quietly. "I don't know how long we can hold them." Lyra clenched her fists. "We hold them as long as we can," she said firmly. "And we hope someone comes." The corridors shook again as Dravik soldiers battered the inner doors. The sound was deafening, a reminder that time was almost up. Every defender took their position, ready for the final stand. For a moment, silence fell. The outpost seemed frozen in time, every eye looking for a sign of hope. Lyra closed her eyes and whispered, almost to herself, "We are not alone. They will come for us." Ryan, hearing her words, gave a small, determined nod. He glanced at the other defenders, who were all tense and ready for battle. "Terrans never leave their own," he said quietly, as if stating a fact the universe could not deny. "If they know we're in danger, they will come." Lyra opened her eyes, staring at the breach. The Dravik soldiers were moments away from breaking in, but for the first time since the siege began, she felt a flicker of hope. She didn't know when help would arrive or how it would come, but she believed. She had to. Outside, the storm clouds above the cliffs rumbled with thunder, mirroring the chaos below. Inside, the defenders of Arkan Outpost braced themselves for the fight of their lives. They were surrounded, they were outnumbered, and the world outside seemed to have forgotten them. And yet, somewhere beyond the horizon, A distant sound of engines roared faintly through the storm. Lyra did not know it yet, but the answer to their prayers was coming. For now, they held their positions, hearts pounding and weapons ready. The Dravic Dominion thought they had victory within reach, but the defenders of Arkan Outpost were not finished yet. Every second they held the line brought them closer to salvation. And somewhere in the dark sky above, salvation was already on its way. The minutes dragged like hours inside the inner bunkers of Arkan Outpost. Dust choked the air, alarms shrieked, and the sound of the Dravic soldiers pounding against reinforced doors filled every corridor. Lyra Ven and her defenders had done everything they could to slow the enemy. Traps, automated turrets, barricades. But the Dravics were relentless. They had prepared for this siege, bringing not only soldiers but massive siege machines that shook the walls with every step. Lyra's claws gripped her weapon tightly as she moved through the bunkers, checking on each group of civilians. The humans and aliens huddled together, fear and exhaustion written on every face. Children clung to their parents, scientists clutched their data tablets like lifelines, and every person prayed silently for a miracle. Ryan moved alongside her, keeping an eye on the outer doors. "Captain," he said quietly, "they're getting ready to breach the last barrier. I don't know how long it will hold." Lyra shook her head, refusing to look at the enemy. "We hold them as long as we can. Every second counts. If we survive even one more wave, someone will come for us. They have to." Ryan's jaw tightened. "We've been saying that for hours. How much longer, Captain?" Before Lyra could answer, the ground beneath the outpost shuddered violently. The walls rattled, the lights flickered, and for a moment, the defenders feared that the entire structure would collapse. A deafening roar followed, a sound unlike any artillery or weapon fire they had heard. Then, far above the storm clouds, a bright streak of light cut through the sky. It moved with impossible speed, leaving a trail of fire in its wake. The defenders froze, staring up through the observation ports as more streaks followed. At first, they thought the enemy had launched a new kind of aerial weapon, something capable of burning entire squads in an instant. But then, shapes became clear. Drop pods, metallic, streamlined, glowing with a faint blue light, rained from the sky. They tore through the clouds and descended toward the battlefield like controlled meteors. Each pod slammed into the ground with a thunderous crash, sending smoke and dirt into the air. The tremors knocked defenders off their feet, and for a moment, the entire outpost seemed to shake with the force of their landing. Ryan's eyes widened. "No, it can't be Terrans," he whispered. Lyra's heart raced. She had hoped for reinforcements, but she never imagined this. Hundreds of pods hit the ground in perfect formation. As the smoke cleared, armored figures emerged from each pod, weapons at the ready, moving with calm precision and purpose. The humans were here, and they were terrifying in their efficiency. Commander Jax Hale stepped from a pod at the center of the battlefield. His armor gleamed under the storm clouds, a combination of reinforced metal and energy shields. His visor reflected the chaos around him, but he moved without hesitation, giving orders in concise commands through his helmet comms. Terran Marines spread across the battlefield, forming defensive lines and striking at the Dravic forces with coordinated precision. The Dravics froze, momentarily stunned by the sudden arrival. They had expected a quick victory, a slaughter of the defenders left behind. But this was something entirely different. The Terrans did not rush in blindly. They advanced with discipline, covering each other, blocking enemy fire, and striking in perfect unison. Lyra could hardly believe her eyes. She moved to the observation window, gasping as she watched the Terran forces engage the enemy. Energy weapons flashed, explosions lit up the dark battlefield, and Dravic soldiers fell under the coordinated assault. "They came for us," Ryan said, his voice trembling with relief and disbelief. "They really came." Lyra nodded, a mix of awe and determination filling her. "We're not alone. Not anymore." The Terrans advanced steadily, reclaiming ground that had been lost. Jax Hale's voice came through the battlefield comms, calm and commanding. "Form up on the left flank. Suppress the Dravik walkers. Keep civilians out of the line of fire. Hold nothing back. Move." Every command was executed flawlessly. Terran engineers deployed portable shields and drones that targeted enemy weak points. Soldiers moved in perfect harmony, covering each other's blind spots, and slowly but surely, the Draviks were pushed back. Their siege machines stumbled under precise hits, and entire squads of soldiers surrendered or fled. Inside the bunkers, Lyra called the defenders to arms. "We move out. Follow the Terrans. We can fight with them." The defenders ran through corridors, emerging from the inner bunkers to join the Terran forces. Human and alien defenders alike fought side by side, guided by Terran strategy. The shift in momentum was immediate. What had seemed like a hopeless defense became a counterattack. Civilians were guided to safety by Terran squads who carried them through rubble-strewn halls and blasted corridors. Ryan stayed close to Lyra, scanning the battlefield. "They're incredible," he muttered. "Every move is precise, every strike calculated. We could never hold like this on our own." Lyra's eyes followed Jax Hale as he coordinated strikes against a massive Dravik walker. The machine had been tearing through the outpost's perimeter, but with a few well-placed plasma shots and explosive charges, it was toppled in a spectacular crash. Smoke and sparks filled the sky as Terrans advanced further, clearing enemy positions one by one. Despite the overwhelming firepower, the Draviks were not defeated yet. Elite soldiers, faster and stronger than their basic troops, pressed forward, determined to finish what they started. They attacked with precision, attempting to cut off Terran squads from the civilians, but the humans anticipated every move. Energy shields blocked strikes, tactical grenades disrupted formations, and disciplined counterattacks forced the Draviks into retreat. Lyra joined a Terran squad, guiding them through the corridors of the outpost. Together, they cleared rooms of enemy soldiers, ensuring civilians were safe and the outpost was secure. Each step was dangerous, each corridor a potential trap, but the Terrans moved with calm confidence. Their presence changed everything. What had been hopeless now felt like a fight that could be won. Hours passed like minutes as the battle raged. The outpost shook with explosions and gunfire, but slowly the Draviks began to falter. Their coordinated attack broke under the combined might of the defenders and the Terrans. Commanders of the enemy forces tried to regroup, but the human leadership was flawless, cutting off escape routes and striking critical points with precision. In the midst of the chaos, Lyra found herself face-to-face with a Dravik elite. The creature lunged with a blade glowing with energy, but she sidestepped, firing her own weapon in perfect timing. The elite fell, and Lyra barely had a moment to breathe before more enemies pressed forward. She realized that she was not just fighting for survival, but for the honor of standing with allies who would never abandon her. Ryan fought beside her, guiding civilians to safer areas while also engaging Dravik soldiers who slipped past the front lines. The two of them worked in unison, blending alien agility with human adaptability. For the first time in hours, they felt like they had a chance. High above the battlefield, the storm clouds began to clear, revealing the sun breaking through. Light reflected off Terran armor, glinting like stars fallen to the battlefield. The defenders, both human and alien, drew strength from the sight. This was more than a rescue. It was proof that when hope is lost, courage and determination can still prevail. By the time the battle began to wind down, the Draviks were in full retreat. Terran Marines pursued them in careful strategic strikes, ensuring they would not return. Smoke rose from shattered siege machines and destroyed enemy vehicles. The battlefield was scarred, but the defenders were alive. Lyra watched as Commander Jax Hale approached, his armor scuffed but undamaged, energy shield flickering from minor hits. He gave a calm nod, acknowledging the defenders. "You held the line," he said. "We responded as soon as we could. No one should have to fight alone." Ryan exhaled deeply, wiping sweat and soot from his brow. "You saved us," he said simply, still in awe of the human's precision and courage. Jax Hale nodded. "We always answer the call. Today it was your fight. Tomorrow we will fight together if we must. Humanity never leaves its own behind." For Lyra, those words resonated deeply. She had seen despair, witnessed hopelessness, and almost lost herself to fear. But now, standing amidst the ruins of Arkan Outpost, she understood the true power of unity. The Terrans had come when all hope seemed lost. They had changed the tide of the battle with courage, discipline, and an unshakable will to protect others. The outpost was battered, but alive. Civilians were safe, soldiers were regrouping, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Lyra allowed herself to feel relief. She knew the battle was far from over. The Dravic Dominion would regroup and return, but now she understood that they would not face the next fight alone. As the sun rose fully above the cliffs of Koran, casting golden light across the battlefield, the defenders and the Terrans looked to the horizon. Smoke and fire still lingered, but so did hope. The sky, once a symbol of despair, now carried the promise of salvation. Lyra turned to Ryan and smiled, a mixture of exhaustion and relief on her face. "They came," she said softly. "They really came." Ryan nodded, eyes still wide from disbelief. "And they'll always come," he whispered. "When we need them most, they won't fail." Above the cliffs, more Terran pods hovered in orbit, ready for deployment if needed. And somewhere beyond the horizon, the message was clear. Humanity had arrived, and no one would fight alone again. The battlefield around Arkan Outpost was a scene of controlled chaos. Smoke curled over shattered rocks, the remnants of Dravic siege machines lay scattered across the terrain, and the survivors of the outpost moved cautiously through corridors and open grounds alike. But despite the destruction, hope had returned. The Terran pods had arrived, and with them came a force unlike anything the defenders had ever faced. Commander Jax Hale stood at the front, assessing the battlefield. His visor reflected the flashes of energy from enemy weapons, and his armor bore scorch marks from near misses. Behind him, squads of Terran Marines formed tight formations, energy shields raised, weapons trained on the Dravic forces that were retreating in disarray. Every movement was precise, every action coordinated. "Team Alpha, take the left flank and suppress the Dravic walkers," Jax commanded. His voice was calm, even as explosions shook the ground. "Team Beta, move through the main corridor, protect civilians and clear all remaining resistance. Team Gamma, cover the extraction points, move now." The teams responded instantly, a seamless dance of disciplined soldiers moving as one. Lyra Venn watched in awe as the Terrans executed their plan. Their coordination was unlike anything she had ever seen. Every step was calculated, every shot deliberate. The Dravics, who had thought the outpost was defenseless, now faced a force that struck with the precision of a machine. Ryan joined Lyra at a shattered observation post. "They're incredible," he said, voice hushed. "Every move is perfect. It's like watching a well-oiled machine, but alive." Lyra nodded, her eyes following a squad that had moved into the northern corridor to flush out remaining enemy troops. "We fight with them," she said. "We coordinate, we push forward. This is our chance." The inner corridors of the outpost became a new battlefield. The Dravics had regrouped in small squads, using narrow hallways to ambush anyone who entered. But the Terrans anticipated this. Drones flew ahead, scanning for traps, while energy shields blocked the Dravik's deadly strikes. Grenades disrupted enemy formations, and disciplined volleys of fire cut through the opposition. Every corner cleared, every enemy neutralized, with almost surgical precision. Lyra moved with a Terran squad, guiding them through the maze-like halls. Civilians were moved to secure rooms, away from the fighting. She marveled at how the Terrans balanced aggression with protection. They struck hard but ensured no innocent life was harmed. Rian covered her flank, using his agility to scout ahead and relay positions of hidden enemies. Together, they cleared a section of the outpost that had been overrun during the initial siege. The floor was littered with debris, broken Dravik equipment, and the remnants of fallen enemies. But among it all, the defenders saw a clear path forward, a corridor that led to the central power core, a critical location the Draviks had attempted to destroy earlier. "Captain," Ryan said, pointing to the heavy doors ahead, "the Draviks planted explosives here. If they detonate, the core goes, and half the outpost collapses." Lyra's stomach tightened. The core was vital, not just for the outpost, but for the research it housed. Without it, months of work and the safety of countless civilians would be lost. She signaled to the Terrans, who moved with efficiency to disarm the explosives. Tiny robotic drones flew ahead, carefully analyzing the detonators, while engineers worked to disconnect wires and neutralize triggers. Minutes passed, each second stretching endlessly. Then a small beep signaled success. The explosives were neutralized. Lyra let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Ryan patted her shoulder. Not bad for a team of desperate survivors. But the battle was far from over. The Dravik elite units, stronger and faster than regular troops, launched a surprise counterattack in the central courtyard. They moved with deadly precision, attempting to flank the Terran squads and cut off the defenders from safety. The air was filled with the hum of energy weapons, the screams of combat, and the clash of metal against shields. Commander Jax Hale moved calmly through the battlefield, coordinating strikes and repositioning squads. "Focus fire on the elites," he ordered. "Use grenades to disrupt their formation. Keep civilians out of sight. Suppress. Don't destroy the building unless necessary." The Terrans obeyed instantly. Energy beams lanced through the air, grenades exploded, and drones harassed the enemy from above. The elite Draviks fought fiercely, but they could not match the human combination of discipline, strategy, and teamwork. Within moments, the elites were pushed back, their formation broken, their attack halted. Lyra and Ryan moved with Team Alpha to secure the courtyard. They fired alongside the Terrans, their weapons supported by the humans' advanced technology. Lyra felt a rush of adrenaline and pride. For the first time, she realized what it truly meant to fight with allies who would never abandon their own. The civilians, guided by Team Beta, were led to secure zones, their fear slowly replaced by awe. They had watched as the Terrans moved through the battlefield, protecting them even while fighting the enemy. Children peeked from behind adults, eyes wide with amazement. Scientists clutched their data and notes, grateful for the humans' skill and care. As the defenders pushed forward, the final Dravik resistance was concentrated near the outpost's main gates. A massive walker, damaged but still operational, guarded the exit. The Terrans approached carefully, coordinating to neutralize it without harming the structure of the outpost. Jax Hale led the strike. He directed a squad to flank the walker, while others targeted its joints and weapons with precise energy blasts. Engineers deployed small, sticky explosives that disabled its mobility. The walker roared in frustration, trying to fire at the advancing troops, but the Terrans anticipated every move. With a final coordinated attack, the machine collapsed in a shower of sparks and smoke. Ryan let out a long breath. "It's over," he said, though he knew better. Battles were rarely truly over, but this one, the siege, was finally broken. Lyra turned to the defenders. Humans and aliens alike had fought side by side, guided and supported by the Terrans. The outpost was battered, some corridors destroyed, but the enemy had been driven back. The survivors had witnessed something extraordinary, the power of human determination, the strength of disciplined teamwork, and the courage to risk everything for others. Commander Hale approached Lyra, his armor scuffed but intact. "You held your ground," he said. "We responded as soon as we could, but you fought bravely. Not many could have held out this long." Lyra nodded, exhaustion and relief washing over her. "We would have fallen without you. But you didn't just save us. You inspired us. Today we learned what it means to fight together." Jax Hale's visor reflected the rising sun above Corin. "That is what humanity does. We never leave our own behind. Today you were our allies, and we were yours. Remember that." "You are not alone." Ryan watched as Terran squads moved to secure the outer perimeter, repair systems, and tend to the wounded. "They're incredible," he murmured. "Not just their weapons, but the way they think. Every move calculated, every life valued." Lyra smiled, though it was tired and strained. "We've never fought like this before," she admitted. "But now we know. When Terrans arrive, the impossible becomes possible." The outpost began to feel alive again. Repair drones flew through damaged corridors, restoring lights and communication lines. Terran engineers assessed structural damage, ensuring the outpost would be fully operational in days, not weeks. Civilians and soldiers alike worked together to clean rubble and help the injured. What had been a place of despair was slowly transforming into a place of hope. In the evening, as the sun dipped behind the cliffs, the survivors gathered in the central courtyard. Lyra stood beside Jax Hale and Ryan, watching the Terrans train younger soldiers, share knowledge, and prepare for any future threats. There was laughter, cautious smiles, and a sense of camaraderie that had been missing for so long. "You saved us," Ryan said again, though now with pride rather than disbelief. "Not just our lives, but our spirit." Jax Hale nodded. "That's what we do. Humanity never walks away. We answer the call every time. Today was no exception. Tomorrow, we stand ready always." Lyra felt a sense of purpose she hadn't known before. She had witnessed courage, skill, and unity at a level she could never have imagined. She realized that the Terran's arrival had not just saved lives, it had changed the way her people would fight, think, and hope in the future. As night fell over Arkan Outpost, the lights of the outpost glimmered against the darkness. Survivors tended to the wounded, civilians rested, and Terran patrols secured the perimeter. For the first time in days, the defenders felt safe. They were surrounded no longer by hopelessness, but by allies and courage. Lyra looked up at the night sky, stars scattered like diamonds across the black expanse. Somewhere far beyond Koran, the Terran fleet waited, ready to answer the next call. She knew the Draviks would return, that new battles would come, and that threats would rise. But she also knew one undeniable truth. Humanity would answer, and when they did, no one would face impossible odds alone. Ryan rested a hand on her shoulder. "We've survived today," he said softly. "And we'll be ready for tomorrow." Lyra nodded. "Yes," she said, looking at the Terrans who now moved through the outpost like guardians of hope. "Tomorrow we fight together, and together we are unstoppable." The defenders of Arkan Outpost had learned a new truth. Courage, unity, and the arrival of allies in the darkest hour could turn hopelessness into victory. And the humans, the Terrans, had shown them that even when surrounded and outnumbered, the sky itself could bring salvation. The battlefield was quiet now, but the silence was not peaceful. Smoke drifted over the outpost, carrying the smell of scorched earth and spent energy weapons. Arkan Outpost, battered and broken, still stood, Its walls bore deep scars, corridors were filled with rubble, and the ground was littered with the remnants of Dravik machines and weapons. But amid the destruction, life continued. Survivors moved cautiously, tending to the wounded and assessing the damage. The defenders had survived, thanks to the arrival of the Terrans, and now they faced the challenge of rebuilding, not just the outpost, but their courage and hope. Captain Lyra Venn stood in the central courtyard, surveying the scene. She had not slept in over 24 hours. Her uniform was torn, her skin streaked with dust and sweat, and her eyes bore the fatigue of endless fighting. Yet, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, she allowed herself a small sense of relief. They had won this battle, and for that, she was grateful. Beside her, Corporal Rian wiped his brow and helped a group of civilians move supplies to a secure building. His face was streaked with grime. But there was a spark in his eyes, a spark of hope. "We made it," he said softly. "I can't believe we made it." Lyra nodded. "We did. But this is only the beginning. The Draviks will regroup. We must be ready for them if they return." Ryan glanced at the Terran squads patrolling the perimeter. The humans moved with a calm efficiency, checking defenses, repairing broken energy shields, and ensuring no enemy had slipped through. Their presence was a reassurance to the defenders. "They've taught us a lot today," he said. "Not just how to fight, but how to survive, how to stay calm in chaos." Lyra smiled faintly. "They didn't just save us. They showed us what it means to fight together. That is the lesson we carry forward." Commander Jax Hale approached, his armor still bearing scorch marks but otherwise intact. He looked around at the survivors, his expression calm but proud. "The Draviks have been pushed back," he said. "Your outpost stands. Your people are safe. That is what matters. Today, you showed courage, resilience, and the will to survive. And we responded. Humanity never leaves its own behind." Lyra bowed her head slightly in gratitude. "We owe you more than words can express. Without you, we would have been lost." Jax Hale shook his head. "No, you fought bravely. You held the line. We only arrived to answer your call. That is what allies do. That is what humanity does." The civilians, many of whom had never seen battle, watched the Terrans with awe. Children peeked from behind adults, eyes wide as soldiers moved with precision and confidence. Scientists and engineers whispered among themselves, clearly inspired by the humans' discipline and skill. Lyra noticed one young engineer examining the Terran drones, clearly fascinated by their design. "Look at them," Ryan said, gesturing to the humans. "They aren't just soldiers. They're teachers, guides, protectors, everything we need in a single force." Lyra nodded. "And they are proof that when we are surrounded, when hope seems lost, there is always a chance. We just need courage and the will to fight." The Terran engineers began assessing the outpost's damages. They moved quickly, deploying drones to repair broken systems, restoring power to key areas, and clearing debris from critical corridors. In the labs, they carefully retrieved damaged research equipment and data cores, ensuring that the scientific work conducted over months would not be lost. Lyra watched as her people regained some sense of normalcy. Hope, once a fragile thing, began to grow stronger. Outside, Terran squads patrolled the perimeter, scanning the rocky cliffs for signs of returning enemies. Their presence was both reassuring and inspiring. No longer did the defenders feel trapped or helpless. They knew that if the Draviks returned, they would not face them alone. The Terrans' arrival had changed the rules of the game, and the defenders understood that clearly. In the central courtyard, Lyra gathered her team. Humans, aliens, scientists, and soldiers alike stood together, battered but unbroken. She addressed them, her voice steady and firm despite exhaustion. "Today, we faced impossible odds. We were surrounded, outnumbered, and almost hopeless. But we survived. Not because we fought alone, but because we fought together. And when help came, we learned that no one is truly alone when courage is strong and allies are true. Remember this day, remember the Terrans, and remember that together we can overcome anything. A round of quiet applause and murmurs of agreement followed. The defenders felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had been tested, and they had survived, and they had seen firsthand what unity and courage could achieve. Commander Jax Hale stepped forward once more. "We will not stay long," he said. "The Terran fleet must continue its patrols and respond to other threats. But know this, today you were not alone. Tomorrow, if danger comes again, humanity will answer. You can rely on that." Lyra nodded, understanding the weight of his words. "Thank you, Commander. Your arrival changed everything. You've given us more than protection. You've given us hope, courage, and the belief that we can face any challenge." As night fell over Arkan Outpost, fires from destroyed equipment slowly burned out, leaving a quiet, star-filled sky. Survivors moved through the corridors, helping the wounded, repairing systems, and sharing stories of bravery and survival. For the first time in days, the outpost felt alive, not just with fear and tension, but with life, laughter, and cautious optimism. Lyra walked to the observation deck, overlooking the cliffs and the surrounding terrain. The Draviks had retreated, leaving behind wreckage and shattered pride. The terrain bore the scars of battle, but the defenders had survived. The outpost had survived. And the knowledge that humanity, the Terrans, would always answer the call filled her with determination. Ryan joined her, leaning against the railing. "Do you think they'll come again if needed?" he asked. "They will," Lyra said firmly. "We are allies now. The Terrans will never abandon those who fight for survival, for justice, and for hope. We've seen it today, and we will remember it forever." As the night deepened, the Terrans prepared their pods for departure. Some soldiers repaired minor damages, while others checked communications and supplies. Jax Hale gathered his command team, giving last orders before leaving. Lyra watched silently, knowing that the bond formed here would last long after the battle was over. Before stepping into his pod, Commander Hale turned to Lyra. "Remember this day," he said. "Remember what it means to fight together. Humanity will answer the call always. You are not alone, Captain. Never alone." With that, he and his team boarded their pods, which lifted gracefully from the courtyard. The engines hummed softly, lifting the Terrans back into orbit. Lyra and Ryan watched as the pods disappeared into the night sky, leaving behind the survivors of Arkan Outpost, alive and inspired. The defenders moved through the outpost, restoring systems and tending to the wounded. The labs were secured, equipment salvaged, and communications repaired. For the first time in days, Lyra felt the weight of exhaustion settle over her. But it was a good exhaustion, the kind that comes from surviving impossible odds and witnessing the courage of others. Ryan beside her finally allowed himself a small smile. "We survived," he said quietly, "because of them and because of us." Lyra nodded, looking over the gathered survivors. "Yes," she said, "we survived, and we will face tomorrow with courage, knowing we are not alone." As the first light of dawn touched the cliffs of Koran, the outpost gleamed against the morning sky. Smoke still rose from some areas, but the majority of the outpost stood tall, a symbol of resilience, courage, and the power of unity. Lyra and her team knew that future battles would come, that the Dravik Dominion would return, and that new threats would rise. But now they had a truth that could not be shaken. When humanity arrives, hope rises. The defenders of Arkan Outpost had been surrounded. They had been hopeless, but they had survived, and they had learned that courage, unity, and the arrival of allies could turn the impossible into victory. For Lyra, Ryan, and every survivor, this was more than a battle won. It was a lesson in bravery, a testament to the strength of alliances, and a promise that when darkness falls, the light of courage and humanity will always rise to meet it. And somewhere above the horizon, far beyond Koran, the Terran fleet moved silently through space, ready to answer the next call. The message was clear: when the sky opens, salvation comes, and humanity will always answer.